and welcome to March edition of Connection Point. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by our GR team to help us sort of think about what's important in our practices and what's important in the immigration world that's going on today, and what actions as members we should take to sort of address the issues that we find important to our clients. So today, there's Chef and also Greg from our GR team, and hopefully you're already familiar with them. And I'm going to start with Greg and sort of say, Greg, we've just had the omnibus that sort of passed. What should members be thinking about and doing right now in this space?
Thanks, Alan. The big picture in terms of the omnibus that just passed is that the federal government is going to be funded for the rest of the year, and that's good news. The bad news is that many of the key priorities that AILA and our coalition partners have been pushing for were not fully included in this package. Things like legal representation, things like reducing funding for detention were not exactly delivered the way that AILA wanted Congress to do it, and that was a disappointment. One thing that we are focused on, Alan, is the immigration court reform issue, which is something that was not part of the omnibus, but is something that has been so important to all of our members for such a long time. Way back about 3 years ago, the board and members did a petition calling for a bill to separate the courts from the control of the Department of Justice. And in fact, just a couple of months ago, Zoe Lofgren, the committee chair for the Immigration Subcommittee in the House, introduced the bill that we've been working on for so long. It's called the Real Courts Rule of Law Act of 2022. And in simple form, it basically creates an independent Article I immigration court that's going to be separate from the Department of Justice. And the reason that's so important is that the courts need that independence, and they need to be able to have the integrity to provide fair, just proceedings, which has not been happening for so long. And that's what's been impacting so many of your clients and your practices. And we have a 1.6 million case backlog right now, which, as you know, means 4 or 5 years in waiting for your case actually to be heard. We've been talking to the court system and DOJ about changing this at the administrative executive branch level, but now we have another step. We have Congress to be able to use its authority legislatively to actually create a separate court system. So that's what we are asking members to really push out there. What we're hoping that all of you can do is to go to your members of Congress, especially Republicans here, because we really need Republican voices to support this bill, and ask them to be co-sponsors of the Real Courts Rule of Law Act of 2022.
And so is this a bipartisan bill already?
We don't yet have a Republican sponsor. It's only in the House so far by Zoe Lofgren, as I mentioned before. We have about 30 to 40 all Democratic co-sponsors right now. So the truth is we need a Republican. That's the most important step here. So if any of you have Republican contacts, that's where to go.
Right, and I think it sort of shows the balance that AILA has when we sort of focus, because a lot of time people are thinking AILA is only thinking about business, but really court reform will really change the game for a lot of the people who work in removal, correct?
That's absolutely right. We just have so many practitioners that are concerned about what's happening in the courts. So we're glad that we have this piece of reform to help address it.
Thank you so much, Greg. So Chef, we hear what's going on there. What do you think is the big impact that we have sort of holding back the much needed reform that we sort of need? And what do you think members should be doing right now to sort of move the needle on immigration reform?
So one of the good things that came out of the omnibus was funding for USCIS and to address their backlogs. And I think what our members have really done well is iterate to Congress like how bad the backlogs are and how that impacts their clients, their businesses, the families they represent, how it affects their daily lives. And I think Congress has been hearing that message loud and clear. For the first time in many years, Congress has appropriated money to USCIS specifically to address their backlogs. And that is a great first step, but I think we need to do more on that front. We really need to get them to continue to hold USCIS accountable on being sure it's transparent, that their processing times are in line with statutory goals. And one of the things that AILA has been pushing for a number of years, and actually we did get introduction of this right before the pandemic, was the USCIS Case Backlog and Transparency Act. But unfortunately, everything went to the wayside because of the pandemic. And now we are trying to get that bill reintroduced. That was a bill that was bipartisan. And so we're working to get another sponsor to make a bipartisan introduction of that bill. And I think one thing our members can do, and I think they already have really great relationships at local offices, oftentimes with the caseworkers, keep telling them about your stories, about going to them with your problem cases, because they then help inform some of the policy work that the offices in DC do. And that we have heard over and over again that the congressional offices are facing the same problems with getting through to USCIS, through their customer service, through their processing times, and not being able to get responses, and they want to act. We recently had a bipartisan letter go out on USCIS customer service. There have been a number of asks on processing times. So this is somewhere I think our members can really help lift the stories and recommendations of what they can do and what the administration can do. So you might be familiar, we just issued a new policy brief on USCIS processing times. There are 10 recommendations in that are really smart, sensible recommendations that either can be done administratively or to get Congress to act. And I would reiterate those recommendations when you speak to members of Congress or their staff, because I think what we bring as AILA members to the table are the stories from the ground and the real world impact.
Right. And so I think it's important that you say that again, that you have already provided, we have provided as an organization solutions to meet some of the challenges that can move in either of these arenas. So don't just call them and say, here's the problem. Maybe also share that document that shares the solutions, right?
Yeah, we have a number of great policy briefs that we've done as AILA and through our help of our members on policy briefs on USCIS, the court backlog, DOS, barriers to legal immigration. So look for those resources and use those to sort of help advocate and come up with solutions. Nobody wants to hear us complain anymore. They want us to come up with real life solutions.
So that's really powerful. So I want to thank Greg and Jeff for joining us, giving us a very clear outline for this month of marching orders of what we can do next as we sort of move through this tumultuous time with backlogs in both court and at the immigration services. And I think the important thing that we're sort of leading to next month is our National Day of Action. And now Sophia is going to join us, tell us how to prepare for National Day of Action and also what the impact of National Day of Action should be. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, Alan. Thank you. Sure. So very exciting. AILA's biggest advocacy event of the year is coming up, and we will be urging members of Congress to tackle and address the issues that Chev and Greg explained. And so the first and foremost, the most important point here is that folks who have registered for this advocacy event really need to get comfortable knowing what AILA's priorities are, and just comfortable with speaking to legislators. So the first thing that you can do is know who your members of Congress are, not just their name, not just their district, but really making a connection piece, right? So we really want to know how we get into that door. They obviously are there to listen, but they might not want to listen about immigration right from the beginning. So really trying to find a way that you can start the conversation to be very comfortable in those rooms, to see, you might share the same church, same sports interests, same college. So really finding a connection piece before going in there and urging them to address all of these issues, immigration related.
Yeah,
so
I used to always check their webpage and see what immigration policies are, just sort of search, right?
For sure. So we are people first, humans first. So definitely getting comfortable before addressing these priorities. And then of course, just getting involved with your advocacy liaisons, your advocacy committees. These are structured in all chapters across AILA. So really just finding that advocacy person that is in your chapter, because they do exist, and then getting plugged in with them.
Well, that's really great. So I think members also should remember that part of our platform from the board is that we're advocating all year round, and that this is just a centralized event for AILA, and that you should consider doing these things outside of just this regular date when there are case problems, such as Chev has already said, those solutions that exist. And Greg has already talked about the immigration courts. Those are some widespread issues that if the backlog didn't exist, a lot of the other problems that we have would not exist as we sort of focus on those solutions. So please take heart to our National Day of Action. And even if you don't participate, please stay attentive to AILA.org for the documents that were provided to educate you about what we were lobbying for on National Day of Action. So you can talk to your local members in your local legislatures to see if we can get some positive things sort of passed. I want to thank everybody for joining me today for this connection point, and we'll see you soon.